Hey everyone, I'm Trixie, aka the Thoughtful Beast, ready. Oh, hello, words. Welcome to the Ready to Talk podcast. I'm here with Khalil Bleux. He's super great, and we're going to get to know him more today. Before we get started, I want to point down there to where you will see. I can't see right now, but the D.D. McClure SD bailout, that's San Diego's local bailout, and they're a grassroots organization that if you are able to donate, please consider donating to them. Remember that even though the news isn't showing all the protests that are happening, they are still happening, and they're very much happening in our own community. So before we get started, Khalil, why don't you tell us a little? I don't know why I'm doing that. Why don't you tell us?
It was very showgirls.
Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
This is gonna be a good time. Yo, what up, y'all? I am Khalil Bleux. Some of you know me off stage as Derek Hodges. I am the founder and producing artistic director of a organization called Agency 515. Also, it is the home of the SOULcial Workers, a collective I founded about 5 years ago that has been using arts as a platform for social education and emotional development. We do a lot of mental health and suicide prevention work. We do a lot of community advocacy and activism around arts and education and mental health. So I run a couple of different programs and events in the community, and I am the co-founder of the Sit in San Diego, a Black healing space that's been activated in the wake of all that's going on in community, and just a few other things. I'm also a performing artist, so I do music and spoken word, and I'm also a theater actor. So a bunch of different things woven in there, but yeah,
I do. Very talented. He's very, very talented.
I do a little something, you
know. Thanks for being on, Khalil. It's really funny because we've been talking, so it's just like let's fake restart.
Right. We were gonna have this whole conversation off camera and be like, oh, yeah. Shit, we never pressed the button.
Yeah, we just never did this again. So I will let's just start with why did you start the SOULcial Workers, and why the name, which I really like.
Yes, thank you. The SOULcial Workers. I started it really just kind of out of a need. It's been a thing that I've been toying with since I was about 15 years old. I had an attempt when I was 15 years old, and I grew up sort of in a world where I didn't have a lot of like care or control. And so it sort of informed my diving into the social service field. And I was having a lot of conversations as like in a bunch of different professional roles, but having a lot of conversations with youth in the community and artists in the community and, social service workers in the community that were all wrestling with mental health issues and suicidal ideation and stressed and overworked and dealing with all of these things that they didn't, even in, trauma-informed and mental health spaces, didn't have the safety to talk about what was really going on for them, myself included. And so it really motivated me to start working on some of the things that I wanted to do in the world. And then I lost my mom in 2015. And it sort of just solidified that it was time for me to like start making my way in the world and using all of the things that I felt like I had to offer in a way that wasn't sort of relegated to a specific role, because in the field, you get hired for a job or you work a gig and you have like this scope of work in a way in which you're prescribed to show up. And I've always been a wild child in my own thing and wanting to bring music and dance and spoken word into mental health conversation and into community and social service work, and wanting to be able to like sit on the floor with kids for hours and just have real conversations and not worry about sort of who at the top was trying to like draw outcomes or make money off of the hurt, but create real open avenues for folks to learn what it is that they needed to learn about what they were experiencing, and to find language and ways to like create and express for themselves. So we started doing the work and just holding space and community and activating a bunch of like fun events. And I titled us the Social Worker because I think who I am and how I show up in my role is really like a marriage of all the cool professional tools and, you know, clinical things I've gotten to learn in my social work, and then like the soul of my artistry that really informs the ways in which we have conversation and hold space, and the root of it being about connecting with folks. And so the Social Workers were born.
It is so beautiful.
I like it. It's a good story.
It's a really cool name. I really like it. It's really simple, but like it says a lot. And just like hearing you talk, and just like seeing who you are in different spaces. Hello, Lind. Sorry. Seeing who you are in different spaces. It's just it's so beautiful to see and hear about how, you know, like these were your responses and reactions to trauma, to not having good times, to having like, you know, not safe spaces, that you created it for other people with your soul, with everything you had. And that's why I love it. And it's so beautiful. And I think it's very clear when people work with you, or at least when I work with you. I guess I got to talk about only myself. I can't talk for other people. You know, when I work with you, it comes out very clear. Like you're just very honest. Like that's why I loved your program that I did. Like, and I know you have many programs, but like I'm sure everyone does feel the same, just because you are very honest. Like it never feels like forced. It feels very much like it's from your soul. And I remember when we were in the QPR training, you were talking about your niece or nephew?
Yes, my niece.
That's right. Yeah. There you go. And you know, like, and yeah, just talking about her and like your love of her and your want to give her so much of yourself, because you know, because children need a lot and they deserve a lot, you know, and like it's I'm gonna get emotional, you know, like being a child like myself who felt like there wasn't a lot of care and support. Like I just think that's beautiful. And like when people like reach back and try to provide that, because it's so easy to go into the way of you're either going to avoid it all, or you end up unfortunately repeating like a cycle of abuse or a cycle of neglect.
Absolutely. And I really don't, like, for me, and the way I envision and the way that I live it, like, it's not really reaching back for me. Like I'm in, right? I'm just kind of reaching around, and like, this is my community and my people, and it's also like my life and my continuous journey of healing that I sort of aim to share with folks. Because I think that traditional structures in this work always paint this image of like, you know, the healed and the folks who need the healing. And like you get this sense that as a leader or as a person who wants to support and help, that you have to be in this position of like fixed. And there are parts of yourself that you're, you know, taught and trained to, you know, to professionally conceal from people, to create like this vibe and that, you know, I have the answers. You, the broken person, have come to me for this. And it's like, actually, no. What is really happening in the real world is that we're all human beings. And, you know, a lot of the toxic, you know, professional work structure abuses a lot of people who do this work in those traditional structures, because you're not allowed to be honest when you're not okay, right? You're not allowed to talk about the shit that happens in your life. And, you know, I know plenty of colleagues that, you know, had lost children and were going through divorces and doing all this stuff. And we're in the office every day, you know, counseling young people in horrible spaces and having to put on this mask as if, you know, they had all the answers and all the things were working well in their life and they're just, you know, here to help. And it's just not accurate. And so I think a lot of the honesty that you noticed and that I hope people feel that comes across is really just that, like giving myself permission to bring all of me into the room. And sometimes that's a hot ass mess, and sometimes it's, you know, profound. And I think that what I love is that I'm able to show up as a real person and really connect with other real people. And that's what it's about for me.
I'm gonna be honest. So like that, like all of that is partially why like I don't want to become like a therapist.
Yeah.
Like I've had so many people tell me like you would make a great therapist, and I'm like, maybe when I'm older. Because I like and don't get me wrong, because like I'm an advocate for professional help. Like I am, like therapy helped me so freaking much, you know, but like in reality, like in reality for me, it really needed to be like therapy, group spaces, right, where like you more can connect. That is more, I don't even know how to explain this. Like, well, if you've never been to different groups, like I used to go to the Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, and then I used to go to one of those meetings, and honestly, I kept going because I didn't know what else to do or to turn to, but it was like the most horrible group experience of my life, like because it was so clicky, and it was so weirdly personal, but really impersonal. And like it's really hard because it's just like you know you need spaces for anonymity, you know, you need that, and then you need spaces also where like you can really like connect, like right, where you really can be imperfect people and just be people and not be like broken, fixed, broken, right, in charge, like and not have that hierarchy. Like I really like, honestly, I feel like mental health like needs that whole variety.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because mental health is not going to be the same for any individual. It's going to be different. Maybe some people really, really need to focus on having that professional therapist and really just focus on like that one-way street of communication, right, because they need that. And then some other people are just going to need to be in spaces where they can literally feel the community like with them and their spirit, and be able to talk to each other and like more so just like relate to each other and be there. Like it's just going to be really different.
I think I 100% agree. And I love a world where both things are true at the same time, right? Because I'm super passionate about demystifying what like therapy and clinical service, you know, has to be for certain people. And I think that there are a lot of, I am in partnership and friendship and in life with plenty of clinicians who are real ass people, right? And who lean into their humanity as a part of their work. And I've had the privilege of being served by some of those individuals as well, which really highlighted for me sort of what it has to be in order to be real. And I think that like, you know, not every intervention is clinical. I don't believe in, you know, clinicians and traditional forms of healing as hierarchy and everything else is, you know, subculture. I really believe that it is a continuum and a spectrum. And I'm hoping to contribute to a world where, you know, clinicians and therapists and educators across the board understand, you know, not only the permission that they have, but also the real responsibility that it is to bring your human to work with you, right? And to lean into that in your process, because no matter, even folks who are about traditional like therapy, and I don't know why I keep doing this. Maybe I don't like it. Yeah, I guess because the idea of like tradition, right? It also it also tells a lie as if other forms of healing are new or emerged, as if they haven't existed just as long simultaneous or even predate, like clinical services as we know them now, right? So there are a lot of things that we sort of put off to the side as healing practices that have worked for people since we've been people and continue to work for people. And there are also a lot of natural ways in which people, find healing and build resilience for themselves. And so but no matter what you do, people connect to people. So even the greatest like psychologists and therapists and folks that we go to seek services, if I can't feel you when I'm in the room with you, then you can't serve me. Like you can't help me. I don't feel like I want to be open with you or like there's anything to bring into that. And so I love what we get to do as the social workers is curate space for all of those people to coexist in humanity. There are folks in our spaces that, are doctors and therapists and clinicians, but they're up there rapping and dancing and doing everything else like everybody else, and also in the room in regular clothes, and just kind of what it would be like to like have the luxury to talk to a therapist on the weekend, and like that person is just somebody that you can talk to and somebody that you connect with, but also carries a lot of really valuable tools that can benefit you along the way. And I want to create relationships like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because yesterday I had a conversation about mental health, specifically, well, not specifically. We started with talking about mental health support that you get as like college students, and then it kind of just like led to we were talking about how specifically UCSD, instead of investing in more, basically like more counselors and psychologists for the students, they just started this thing called the Zone, and they had like succulents, and they would bring in therapy dogs, and like it's so interesting because it's just like these aren't bad things necessarily, but it's like someone said, someone being like, we can't just have it all formal, and we can't just do this. We should do like, like they're saying that, and you're like, yes, this is true. And they're like, let's bring in dogs. And you're like, wait.
Just know the moment in the meeting that someone said puppies, and everyone's like, yes.
Yeah. You're just like, but wait, there needs to be more talk around this. And then we started talking more about like different forms of healing. And that's the thing that's so beautiful and so confusing about healing and mental health.
Right.
Is that it's not black and white, like everything in life. It's not black and white. It's not this or that. And we were talking about, like things in conjunction, and my guest Joseph was talking about how he goes to therapy, and he's really worried that people are seeing like professional help as this Western thing, and then are therefore taking that out as an option. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, whoa, like, like it's so interesting because it creates a dichotomy, like East versus Western medicine. And it's just like, why is it a versus?
Because America loves it. We love to other stuff, right? And that's what we do. And I think like that's just, we spend so much time trying to like separate, out other things and assert ourselves as supreme. And it's just like, bruh, this whole time we could have just been doing this together. We've been good by now. Like it would have been like, it's fine. It's capitalism. We gotta find a way to commodify, to own something, to name it, to be the person who generated this method and came up with this process. And now, like, shut up. none of what folks are doing is original. And, there's just so much problem that gets created in trying to commodify help. And that's the thing that we're up against. And that's the thing that's ailing us, because yes, the Western promotional campaign that went around therapeutic services, and that's the image in America's mind, and the supremacy that's practiced in that field, that most of the folks who are licensed practitioners and that have, buildings and working spaces are white folks, and so it's like there's a lot of association that folks have to shake to the idea of therapy. But like, I have a therapist. I see her every Thursday at 1, and she is a beautiful Black woman, and we talk about real shit, and I get my healing, and that is what it is. And I think that there's something to that, and people are really walking around, not aware that there's another way to do this, right? And that there are many people that hold this clinical space that are Black and Latina and Asian, and that do it with music, and that do, I had a therapist, and one of my students was got connected, and it's like there are video games that get used to like process thought. I thought that's so fucking cool. And exactly the way that you connect to a young person to like enter into a casual but like personal conversation, like let's play together. And I think that the more that people like learn that there is a way to get professional support in ways that it feels natural and feels right for you, so that you don't feel like you have to play this role of, the broken in order to get support, that you don't have to come in here and be abused and have a bunch of people like throw labels and all of this really problematic language over you that just fucks up the way that you see yourself and the relationship that you have with your own experiences and sense of worth and wellness. And then figure out how you wrestle with that by yourself and apply, these really like white regimented tools that are meant to take you through the steps. And it's like, this is not, nobody is healing this way. Like nobody has the 8-week package for you to go from like one space to another. And it's
I did it. I beat depression. I did it.
It's not a thing. Nobody has it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, and I'm so glad, and I'm really glad that like there are spaces like your spaces and other spaces in the community, because it just like, again, with what you're saying, like unfortunately a lot of clinical spaces are for white people by white people, and please don't get it twisted when I'm not saying all white people are bad. People are weird. I'm just like, this is what I'm saying. I can critique white people without hating white people. My boyfriend's white.
I just can't even honor that with with a response. Like, folks, come on now.
Right. But it happens. It's weird. It's been weird. It's been a weird time. Anyways, back to what you're saying. But that's the thing that's so cool about spaces like yours, where like it's just another entry point. Because some people like, people don't even realize that there are things that, like free clinics. Because people think of therapy and they think a butt ton of money. They think like, I'm fucking poor, like I can't.
I mean, accurate.
Yeah, because it's accurate. Like I am very, very lucky to where like my therapist who I saw the longest, basically I was hooked up and went past her sliding scale to like $50 a session. Because basically I was suicidal, and like my friend was like, she needs help, like please help her. And luckily she was like a kind enough woman to keep that up for the multiple years I saw her. Right. So like, but the thing is just like, that's not common. And even $50 a session is a lot.
Right.
Like because I could only afford once a week, and really at the time I needed like support every day. Like, and that's the thing that's so unfortunate. Like people feel like even now, even me, I'm just like trying to figure out like, oh, if I get a specialist, like, am I going to even be able to get one? Like, I'm on these wait lists. Like, should I just go for another not specialized therapist? But is this going to help me? Like, there's so much to figure out. So it's so great that there are more spaces created by other people where it can be like, yes, clinical therapy is great, but also being in spaces where it teaches you other ways to heal. Like, that's also beautiful, and that's also really helpful.
Yeah. And I think because for us, a lot of like our approach to prevention is through like relationship building. Like I really have a fundamental belief that everything that ails us in society is about like relational disconnect, right? And there's something really important about like folks recognizing, the point in which relationships got disrupted for them, right? Or all of the things that have happened along their journey that have made relationship impossible in their world. And I really find, for me, it was the ticket, right, for me to getting to another point in my healing, because I carried a lot of hurt and a lot of lived experience and a lot of trauma and a lot of just like relationships weren't good. But because of that, I learned throughout my journey that all of the things that were going wrong in my relationships were about me, right? And every like fucked up thing that happened to me, was something about me, or there was something, even the ways in which, clinical spaces and, national data, languages people like me, that there's something inherently deficient about my Blackness or about my queerness or about, the fact that I grew up in this neighborhood or I went to this school. And it's like, actually, almost none of that, right, is about you. And a lot of the abuse or things that you've experienced in relationships have taught you things about how to think and feel about yourself and how to think and feel about others and ways to behave in the world when certain feelings come up for you. And I think that there's in professional space, when we go to learn to be counselors and when we go to they teach you all that shit, right? They teach you how to, do cognitive behavioral, analysis and do all of this stuff. And it's like, what if we were just teaching people who were living this, like, oh, there's a name for what you're experiencing right now, right? And so this thing happened in your life. Well, yeah, it could potentially be impacting you in all of these ways. And these are really natural, really common responses to the types of experiences that you've had, and what magic there is in just being able to name your experience for yourself, name the thing that hurts you, learn what that thing is and how to move around it, and having access and agency to tell your own story and represent your experience in a way that feels true to you. And I feel like there so much opens up in the space of possibility when folks are able to go like, what happened to me isn't about me. It doesn't have to label or color who I become or who I show up in the world as for the rest of my life. And I'm not the only one who is sort of sitting in this curiosity about, am I enough? Or am I lovable because of the things that I'm holding in secret about my experience? And that's the kind of work that I wanted to be doing. Because I'm a group kid too, and I grew up in that world. And I know for myself, and just even for the work that I do now, that there's something different that happens when you're able to sit in a space with people who you feel in relationship to. And they don't have to all look exactly like you or come from your neighborhood or have been through, the exact thing that you've been through. But the ability to sit in your vulnerability and recognize that version of yourself in other people and see it in them and hear their stories and see how the different choices that people have made about how they navigate their pain, it really makes it human, right? And it really makes it common, and folks myself, I am continuously growing in a space with human beings that are just figuring their shit out and growing as they come along. And the more that you can show up to remove opportunities for shame, right? To sit with people as they, break silence and be there to look at stigma and be like, oh, that's bullshit. I think it helps. And that's who I want to be.
Yeah. There's so many things I want to say in response. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so one, don't you wish psychology was like taught like in grade school? Just
yes.
like even just being like, kids, let's look at emotions today. Let's learn what anger is. Like, why are different reasons you can feel angry? What are different things you can do with your anger that aren't harmful to you?
Right.
When I think of myself as a child, when I think of like other children I knew growing up and just children now, like when you were talking about, like there's so much pain. Like we could get rid of so much suffering if we just educated people about those things. Like my friend wasn't a child at this point, but I remember one of my friends thinking he was literally crazy. He was so convinced that there was something wrong with him, to the point where like he started having a problem with alcohol, like a problem. And he was talking to me about like, like how he was just so convinced. He was so convinced that there was something wrong with him. They're so convinced. And then when he told me everything, I was like, you're not crazy. When people treat you poorly, this is how you're going to feel. That doesn't mean you're weak. That's a normal thing. But like the thing is, like, I always think about that moment and I'm like, oh my God, what if someone just taught you this when you were younger?
Right. Like, oh, it's not okay for me to be abused. Aha. Right. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah. And people like as when we say it, it seems like a duh. But honestly, like, it's not a duh. No. Like there have been so many times in my life where I really did wish someone had just told me it wasn't your fault. Mm-hmm. And now I keep thinking of like Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault, Will.
You got all
like, but you know what I mean? But it's true. Like I think to some people that was like super over dramatic and like, oh my God, this is such an emotional drama. But like, I'm like, no, that's real life. So many of us needed to be told like, no, that wasn't your fault. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't your fault. Like, and because we don't have those coping mechanisms, because we don't have the knowledge when we're young, we just like internalize things and then just try to like figure out while we're weighed down with all these things that are like super confusing and super hurtful and painful. And it like, and that just makes me like, that's just so sad. Like, like when you look at children, I had this really hard time last year where I realized that the dance students I was teaching, that they were the age that I was basically when I was being sexually molested. And it fucked me up because I had so many years of being like, I should have known better. I should have known better. I should have told someone, like, I should have known better. I knew what was happening. And then when I looked at them and I was like, no, like, wow, how would I ever expect like these children, like, to be able to protect themselves in that way?
Right.
Like, it's so unfair, and it was so, it was so perfectly clear, but it wasn't clear to me growing up. Right. It's like I'm 31 and I still have problems with that, like accepting like, no, it wasn't my fault. Like I was a child, like, and those things like that, even when you're healing from those kind of things, like it still goes on. You can't like magically erase them away.
Whoever told the lie that time heals all wounds, like I want to punch that person in the face. I do. I hate it's just such a hideous lie. And it's like time does nothing to heal wounds. Like it gives you space to avoid them, right? But taking the time to heal wounds heals wounds, right? And then that's the thing. And feeling like there's just so much nuance in that, right? Because this idea of feeling like you're crazy for the things that you see and experience in the world, right? We even live in shame thinking that thought originates in us. And it's like, no, you're literally taught that from a time that you're a child in this country, right? That anything that doesn't look, like the American performance of resilience or bootstrapping or whatever it is that we call them, or if you don't learn how to behave in public, which means like follow orders and check your emotions at the door, or all the things that you're taught to privatize pain, right? And to hold it in and to, shame yourself in the mirror for actually feeling it when you spend all day outside pretending that you're not, it really, really puts you in this space between reality, right? And that is it is a real impact of healing conversation and like authenticity around pain and the real experience of it being silenced in our system, right? People don't want to hear that shit, and people don't want to see that, even in the ways like, it's a thing that I talk about often, but it's the thing that pisses me off the most about like what happens in media space with Black families who are, victims of the terror that happens in this country, that even when, it's like, we'll kill your family and then we'll take you on tour. And then the folks, families are having these press releases and talking about the stories of loved ones who were killed and have to give this very professional speech and talk in a certain cadence and do like this media training around how you express absolute horror. And it's like, no, there is something that is being silenced in this space, right? That sitting at this microphone right now is anxiety inducing. That there is something in me that is like white knuckling composure, that when I talk about my child, I just want to boo-hoo. I just want to break down in tears. But I can't do that on camera, because to the world, they will look at that and say, well, that person doesn't have any composure. Like, maybe we should get someone, who has the ability to, have a little bit of a tougher skin and handle this in a different way. And then we'll be willing to have the conversation, because we literally won't hear you through your tears. We won't hear you through your anger. We won't hear you through anything that doesn't read as like grace and respect and professionalism. And it's like, I hate it here sometimes. Because people get driven crazy by having to pretend that they're not affected by the craziness that happens every day in our world. And it's like, we have to do a lot more work around holding space for people's humanity, especially, and I know like I don't have any like romanticized notions that people in Fortune 500 companies or in these really corporate and capitalistic spaces are going to do anything to move the needle about how they connect in humanity, because that's not their job, right? Their job is to make money off of humanity. They don't care about the people. But I think in fields like ours, like in arts and in helping and healing spaces and all of these where we've built a profession around, moving people through their vulnerability, we have to get back to the space where it was people wanting to come and do this work because they themselves were people that noticed the hurt in the world that they wanted to help heal. And that really has to be the driving force behind what you do. And if you're not operating from a place of your own humanity, then you're like, not only are you disconnected from an ability to authentically support others as they move through theirs, but you create a lot of space in how you show up to be fucking harmful, because it's all of the professionalism and all of the ways in which you negotiate, who you are and what your job is, that really causes a lot of pain and abuse for people, and we have people in these positions of leader and helper that aren't doing what they should be doing, either because like they don't want to, or for some reason they feel like they're not allowed to. And I think it's just really important that we get out of these standard practices around how we heal and connect with one another.
Oh, I so agree. And I hate it here too sometimes. Like, because it's so true when you think about, like the way that media gatekeeps emotion. Like, when is it okay? When is anger, and when is it passion? Like, I will forever be pissed off about fucking Kavanaugh and like people calling him passionate when obviously this man was outright like angry. Like it was all rage. It was rage and hate. And it's like, well, he's a passionate man trying to defend himself. And then
yeah.
Well, then
white rage is passion, black rage, black passion is rage, right?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Right? It's just like super. That one is a super gatekeepy time because it's just like basically if you're a white man, you can have emotions, and if not, like you can. Not even white women can have emotions.
Oh no.
Like that.
No. Oh no.
Through that whole freaking. Through that whole thing, like she just had to stand there and just, I'm going to answer questions just because of what you were saying, like that happened to black people is happening to her too. She can't seem like she's overly emotional because apparently that makes everything fake. Like if you're too emotional,
incompetent, we don't trust you. You can't hold it together. Like, fuck you guys. Like, like really, sometimes we don't see how we're shooting our own selves in the foot and how we're working against who we say we want to be or the kind of world we want to design. It's like, well, here are like 25 things that we can stop doing today, right now, that would move the needle on all of this. And we were like, that means like actually doing stuff. I don't know. Let's look at puppies.
Puppies. Just pet the puppies. Everybody loves puppies, right? Like it is very that. It's like, let's not do the hard work. Let's instead make it all about capitalism. Like going back to what you said, like I hate that mental health and like, especially self-care has just become like this capitalist thing where it's just like, you don't need money to take care of yourself, but you really think you do now, so it's weird, and so you don't take care of yourself. Like it's
self-care is such a conflated lie as well. Like, bruh, yes, it's important. I'm not gonna completely like throw the whole thing out the window. It is a thing that we need to practice. Also, we have to start getting real about the ways in which we are denying people community care, right? And we can't just keep abusing people and then sending them off by themselves to go do your own work. And I used to hate that working in social services when our bosses would be like, oh, you should go do some self-care, and we just want to make sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. As if like this overwhelm, this overwork, this anxiety, everything that I'm feeling at this job, I just like packed it in my lunch bag and brought it here. No, you're doing this to me. you are the ones that are working me like this. I'm having to deal with racism in this space, like the lies that you telling me about how this is operating, the lies that you're telling communities, the lies that you're sending me out to tell the community. Like there is a lot that you are doing that is impeding on my care. So self-care, sure, it's cute and all. We need that. However, we also need to be in more spaces where we are cared for.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've never actually thought of that before, so thank you for pointing that out. Like self-care is great, but it's also just like it's sad because it's kind of just like, you have to take care of yourself because no one else is going to take care of you. Like, your job don't give a fuck. And it's just like, it shouldn't be that way. And like, you know, like a lot of businesses and companies have been like, oh, we do care for you. Here's a yoga class every Friday at 12 during your lunch. So make sure that's your lunch though. Like,
Right.
Please don't confuse the fact that you get yoga and a lunch.
For sure.
And
make sure you don't bring your mat with you. We wouldn't want to give any of our donors the impression that people aren't working hard around here, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I don't know. I log out sometimes. I had to. And I feel like that's always like the story of folks who like me end up creating their own organizations. You just get sort of like traumatized out of the regular field and like pushed out of spaces. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll like build my own thing. But it's like which is beautiful, right? And that experience has afforded me a lot of opportunity to like show up in community in a real way and to do the things that I love with people that I love. And so I'm like grateful to not be working, full-time plus at some other organization that I don't necessarily align with. And also I would love to see a sector where folks were working on collaboration and working on community as community. And I just feel like there would be a lot more growth, a lot more impact. We would be closer to executing our missions as organizations if we embodied the language in our statements and in our values, rather than just putting a bunch of words out there to cash checks and to chip away at it, which is, I'm sure, beautiful. But I really love what COVID has taught us, that the systems don't have to move slow. They don't. They can change overnight if they want to, and resources can be released, and structures can be revisioned, and the style in which we approach work can be revamped in a few hours if that's what we're passionate about doing. And I'd love to see that level of urgency moved throughout our city and our community, in space of like being anti-racist, right? Getting all of the barriers out of the way, and then diving in to actually, having integrity around doing what we want to do, and working and building our organizations in ways that don't mimic the larger system structure, but are responsive and amenable to community needs, because that's what we're here for.
And I'm just like, at this point, I'm hoping for like awareness and understanding that we're like what you were saying, things can happen like this if the people in charge of us, want them to happen. Like, I hope people are aware of please be aware of where our government is putting the money. Where are they? Who are they bailing out? It's very clear. I think it's becoming clear to a lot of people. And I hope also what's becoming clear is like what you said, or how do I put this? It's so strange because I feel like everyone's like, yeah, boo racism, right? But then for some reason it's the disconnect where it's just like, yeah, racism is bad, but we're not going to do the hard work that you were talking about before of like dismantling that racism within companies and organizations. Because why would we do that? Because that's part of the system. I feel like sometimes people aren't really cognitive about what systemic racism means.
Right. And I think people have it like in the language, right? People, especially in San Diego, right? A lot of people have an understanding about, anti-racism, or they're learning it right now, what it means in language. And they're using all of the language in their grants and, and some of it in their job description. But I don't think people understand racist practice, right? I think we get a sense of racist ideals, and but racist practices. And a lot of that looks like just about everything you've been doing for the last 10 years that you've been in operation, right? And folks, the thing that we're wrestling with in this anti-racism game is survival. There are a lot of people in this sector that are being called to get in integrity about the work they say they've been doing for years. They say they've been social justice organizations. They say they've been anti-racist. They say they've been, you know, people-centered and all of the really pretty things that get them awards and get them on TV and stuff. But what it really means to step into the work and step into the mirror means that some of the power and some of the positionality that you hold in this community, if not all of it, has to go, right? Because the power that you have, you stole, you know, and the position that you hold in community at this point is now a position of barrier to the very people who you say that you are showing up to support. So if you want to make space for BIPOC artists, that means you can't be front and center, right? If you want to make space for communities of color, that means that you can't come chasing all the grants and stealing all the money from the organizations of color who need the resources that you just got awarded, you know, to be white and well-meaning. It means a lot of the things that give you your authority in this country, or I mean this community, and a lot of the things in which you claim as expertise. You're gonna have to get honest about the fact that, yeah, it is really actually artists of color who are doing all of my work. It's really actually, you know, these Black and brown kids whose stories I've been selling that give me my $100,000 salary, right? It's really all of those ways in which I've been practicing white supremacy, but I learned that it was just good business. And so now I have to unlearn everything that has made me a successful organization up until this point if I want to be an organization that successfully supports the people who I say I'm here to serve. And it sucks, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be embarrassing, and maybe that means that you get a little less hair dye, or you get $20,000 less, you know, in your salary. But I think that if you're really here to do the work you say you're here to do, then the ways in which you draw power off the backs of people of color have to stop. And and that's just the bottom line. So when I'm gonna know, like you said, time will tell. I'm gonna know the people who are interested in being different people when they start showing up differently. And it's like, not to say that the work, you know, some of these white institutions, the thing that really irritates me the most is hearing them shoot off their resume and, well, I've done this, and, you know, I all of these, you know, things that I've done for community members absolve me of, you know, my abuse. And it's like, no, because like all of those things that you're naming is exactly how you got here, right? And those are all community members and stories and photos and pictures and videos that you have used to sell and put yourself in a position of power over years and years and years, and brought in, you know, the beautiful Black bodies to dance on your stages and paid them, you know, pennies while you padded your pockets or your organizations, or just the ways in which you just allowed problematic practices, abusive practices, things that you're well aware of because you're in all of the community member meetings, you're in all of the funding meetings, you're at all the conferences, you're going to all the fancy spots all across the country, learning from the best. Like, you're well aware that some of the shit you're doing, if not all of it, is problematic. You just haven't existed in a world where you've been held accountable, where anybody calls you to the carpet about how you show up, because in San Diego, it's enough to be white and well-meaning. and that's the bottom line. The people who fund your work, they just want to see the pretty PowerPoint presentations of the little Black kids that you were in your program, and they just want to hear the stories about, oh, you know, those poor kids that had no future until they met you. And so like that, we're done with that. And I'm done with all of the leaders who haven't figured out yet that is the problem. and that the ways in which they move every day are the very things that we're talking about when we speak about being anti-racist, when we speak about abolishing supremacy across the board and all of the ways in which it shows up. Folks got to relearn how to be with community.
They do. They do. And it's so, I so agree. Like that, like, and going back to that defensiveness is so like, it's so hard because I've heard a lot of shit said to me, like among those sentences, like, but I did this, and really all I wanted to yell back was like, who the fuck cares what you did? I'm telling you now, you need to stop being racist, or like now things need to change now. Like if you don't want to do anything now, get the fuck out.
Right.
Like, because it's never enough. Like you can't just be like, well, I did my part. Racism solves. It's just like,
yeah,
no.
You also cashed a nice check, and you also bought a house, and you also bought a car, and sent your kids to private school, and all of the things, you did those things, and then you used all of that work as receipts, right? So it's not like you've just been dropping off good deeds in the world and you haven't benefited at all from them. That's not the story. And no matter what you've done for communities, right? Like these people don't owe you.
No.
We don't owe you. And you asserted yourself as a leader, as a person to do this work. So it is your job. It is your organizational responsibility. You are taking public dollars to do these things. So they don't get to become your shining gold stars to wave in people's faces when they call you in about problematic behavior, and we love to deflect in that way. And we love to use, popular sayings, like, oh, it's a marathon, not a sprint, to like be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna sit here a little while longer in my abuse, and I'll come out, slowly when I feel like it, or when I can find a way, to keep my budget the same, and just, move all of the inequity out of the way. And unfortunately, like those things, it's not gonna work that way for you. So yes, it is a marathon, but also get to sprinting. Right, because you need to move now.
Yeah. It's so funny that you said that, because it's so funny how people like take idioms like the wrong way, where it's like what people are saying is that like, real change, like when we're talking about real change, we're talking about like not you and your organization change. We're talking about like racism, like everyone, like the whole country having a whole different mindset about racism, and even just like what it is and what, like, we're talking about that. We're not talking about like you and your money.
Yeah,
that's not what we're talking about, because like that's easy. Like things like that can change. Like you could, like, you can do an extreme thing and just be like, we're just closing.
And that's not and I want to say that to anybody who may listen to this or play this in a court, like there is nothing wrong with closing your doors for a little bit to figure it out. Like, I'm sorry, San Diego is so saturated with nonprofits, and yes, a lot of them do a lot of beautiful work, but like every single one of you are not necessary, right? And every single one of you, it is not, you don't need to be this nationally recognized organization or this big deal in the world because you have a nonprofit. Like, first figure out if you can do right by your local community first, right? First figure out if you got it down. And if you don't, like, do your community a solid and say, yo, we're gonna go work on our shit real quick. We'll be back, you know what I mean? And we're gonna find ways to like maybe stay engaged or show up in support of, but like it is okay to like, yeah, we had this big fundraising year plan and these programs and all of these things that we were gonna do. And then we realized like, that's probably not how we need to be showing up, and probably a contribution to a lot of the problems that not only like the world at large is saying, but listening to the direct artists that work with and for you, listening to the kids that are in your program every day, right? And not for the confirmation bias where you can hear like, oh yeah, I was sad and, you know, I didn't have any friends before I came in here. And then I got confidence and I got people to, and that's not what we're listening for, like, sweetie, and stop throwing that in people's faces because you can sell a trauma to triumph trajectory story. Like, really figure out what being anti-racist for you really can mean, what it can really look like really examining all of the ways in which you practice it and chilling for a little bit. And that's okay. That's actually the real work, right? And when we welcome you back, and we will welcome you back, we'll welcome you in your new version and be excited to re-engage with the beautiful like products you have, the beautiful programs, the things that you're doing. Like, that'll be wonderful. We just want to have those experiences without the abuse, right? Without feeling like shit. We just want to be able to feel like authentically safe and a part of, and that you are a part of us. And right now, in the ways in which a lot of these institutions do relationships, it's not possible. And there isn't any, like, there's a lot of conversations that we can have, but it boils down to like, are you going to step into the actions or no? And it's a no for a lot of people. And they're saying yes, but it's a no.
Again, like, it's just going to be really clear. It's going to be very clear. Like, time will tell. It's like, who are you really here for? The people who are giving you money, or are you here for the community? Because it's like, I understand like turning down donors and stuff like that, because you know you have racist donors. Like, obviously that hurts you as an organization, but it's just like, really, where do your loyalties lie? Because that's the thing that I feel like people either don't care, or organizations either don't care, or they don't realize, like the thing you said, if you are actually here for the community will be here for you. People will come back and like do this. Like, there are still people like still fighting for different organizations trying to do this work that we shouldn't be doing, just because they're just like, like, some of you are so close, or like, oh god, like it's there's just so much. It's you know, not
it's not all of it.
it's not going so well for most people, but like, that's the thing. It's so hard because there are still specific people that I can think of in the community where I'm like, no, I know you mean it, but you're kind of alone in your organization. I don't know what you're gonna do. Like, I was just like, you know what? Maybe I have to say to you, maybe you don't belong here. Like, maybe your best foot really isn't in that organization because you mean it, you know? Like, it's not like, no white people are doing anything. There are a lot of white people really trying. Like, there are a lot of like Asian people really trying. There's a lot of Asian people who are hella not trying, by the way, but that's another story. So that's another thing, you know, like, it's not just like a white person thing.
No, whiteness and white people are two different conversations. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, whiteness shows up in all of us, right? And those things live in how we operate through this country. And I mean, I don't know why I keep saying I got the country on my mind. I've been watching the DNC stuff, and I'm like, but I just got the country on my mind lately. But yeah, no, it's just like the way that we live in America, right? And if you just happen to be born here, then you were born into racist ideals, right? And you were born into a structure that was built on them. So we are indoctrinated into the practice of racism from the time that we draw our first breath in America. So it's not a surprise that folks are racist, right? And it's not, you know, it's on purpose racism, right? It's people, you're racist on purpose. We need you to be operating under the guise of racist ideas so that you will be compliant to the system and the structure that we have built off of them. And that's bottom line. So when we can understand that and then say, yes, so that happened, right? Not your fault. Your choice comes in is whether you choose to like maintenance that racism or dismantle it in yourself. And you get to choose how you want to show up every single day. And there are a lot of people who are engaged in this process of like decolonizing and finding, you know, dealing with their anti-Blackness and dealing with the racism that exists in them. I am on this journey doing that work for myself every day. And I think that I'm excited about a culture or, you know, a collective of us that are like building in a way that we're like, cool, we've learned sort of the things that we want to do, right? The ways and the ideas that we hold are great. And I like San Diego is full of visionaries and full of really, really talented, really intelligent, just really like soulful people. And, you know, being a person born and raised here, I say that hands down. Like, I love San Diego. I love, you know, this community. It raised me, literally. It is raising me. And I also know that there's a lot of traditional practice that we're patriotic to here. And there's a lot of, you know, conservation that drives, you know, the ways in which we operate. There's a lot of like, I don't know, we feel like there's like this, we feel like we're deficient of resources, right? and we're not, you know, and we keep going about this the wrong way. We keep talking about diversity like it's something we have to create, like we're not already that. Like, we keep talking about like inclusion as if it's some like Rubik's Cube that we got to figure out or some magic spell that we got to say. No, inclusion means just stop closing the door on people. You do that all of the time. You can stop that, and it's easy. Like, you can do a lot of these things really naturally if we only choose to, and stop trying to like find a systemic way to go about it in our everyday practices, because those two things are not mutually exclusive. Right? Like, my little piddly ass organization is not, you know, the thing that is going to get the White House to diversify. No, but I can definitely not make my organization a White House. I can do that. and folks got to move out of their White Houses. And that's just and that's just where we're at. And there are plenty of spaces that will hold you. There's plenty of land to rebuild on. There are plenty of resources, plenty of talented people. There are plenty of artists in here that are willing to offer their services and their time and talents, you know, not even for the check, but just for the possibility of really creating the world that we see in our minds and that we try to express through our art. And I want my sector, you know, especially in this mental health field, especially in this field of arts and humanities, to understand that we already have everything that we need to be the people that we want to be. We just have to stop looking up and outwards, thinking that that's where the power is coming from in us, and be okay with being a community of people that doesn't look like the system structure. You know, if the system doesn't recognize itself in us, like, that's a good day. and I think I'm excited about that. And we can do that if we want to.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this hour has passed already, and it was super fast. So I want to wrap it up by asking you one question. Ooh. And while you're thinking of the answer, I will talk about Dee Dee McClure. So that will give you a second. So I guess my question to you is, what would you say to other people who want to create community spaces, who like want to start more community spaces? Maybe they're thinking about going nonprofit, maybe not. That's really general, but what would you say to the people who want to create more spaces like this in their own community? And while you're thinking about that real general kind of weird question, I'm going to say, so below you can see Dee Dee McClure, San Diego Bailout. It's our local community grassroots bailout for San Diego. Please remember that even though the news isn't showing that people are protesting, people are still protesting. So if you can't be out there in the front lines, that's fine. Please choose another lane and consider donating.
Yes, San Diego Bailout is doing their thing. Please support.
Do you have your answer?
Yes.
Okay, go.
So what would I say to people who want to create community spaces? I would say the community is yours. Create the space. and it's really that. It takes a lot less to activate something, right? And I think that in order to need a community space, all you need is community. So like find the people that you want to do it with. And that means folks on your team and also folks that you want to serve, because both are your teammates, and then take up your space. And I, from personal experience and just from what I believe, I feel like when people in your community see that something has been activated for them, they will come to claim it. They will join it. They will help you build it. I'm living that in real time, and I'm seeing it happen all over. So claim your space.
Yeah. Well, Derek, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yo, this is dope.
This was super fun, and you need to come back again because I totally want to talk about other things with you. Actually, like, because Suicide Prevention Month is coming.
Yeah, so we're working on our events.
Yes. And I would love for you. You need to come back so we can also talk about your organization some more.
Right. We didn't do much of that, which is cool. Right? I suck at the self-promotion thing, right?
I could have led you better, but I was like, this conversation is so good.
No, it's like, I know I'm supposed to be doing all of that stuff because, like, at the end of the day, I run a business, but also, like, I'm in these streets. Call me. Like, that's a...
This is, like, honestly, for those of you who are watching now or who will be watching in the future, the thing is, like, I want you to know and them to know, like, this is Khalil. Like, if you know, this is him as a person, and if that interests you, this is what he's like. This is what he's like in his organizations. So, you know, if you're super vibing with this, if you super like this, if you also want to curse, then please look for him.
Come cuss with me, baby. I'll do it all day. So please.
You can find him in that link below on Instagram, the SOULcial Workers. I made myself go away. My bad. Okay, well, thank you. This has been super fun.
Yes.
For all of you out there watching and stuff again, please check out Khalil. Please check out the SOULcial Workers. They're on Instagram, but you can also find them on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Website will be up by Suicide Prevention Week. We got doing a whole revamp thing.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everyone. See you next time.